I'll be back. I know I am back. Welcome back to Lizard of Doom. I am Max, now with 30% more face. Ooh. The project I was planning to bring you this week is taking a little bit longer, so that'll be coming next week. It's quite a big project to do in one go, so I'm bringing you something little that's going to go in that project now. When making a 2,000 point list for the army coming next week, I had a little gap at the end. That was perfectly filled with an assassin. But not just any assassin. My favourite assassin in fiction is the T1000 from Terminator 2 Judgment Day. Shiny boy, chrome boy, long arm knife boy.
Unrelenting killer.
That is the assassin I want in my army. And I can, because it's my army. Shut up, nerds. I am trying to make this next army coming up with all Games Workshop miniatures, not a lot done to them, so it will be playable in any given place. I can take this to a Games Workshop event or store or something and play it wherever I want to without anyone going, that kit little bit was from a different kit, that's not Games Workshop, you cannot play here. Go away. So I am limited for choice making my T1000 Assassin Chrome bot. I'm going to go with an Assassin model and modify it to become the T1000. For that, I need the smoothest assassin. So these three are out, and this one has the smoothest suit. So the Calidus Assassin it is. Having chosen the Calidus Assassin, it was now time to free her from her unbreakable bonds. That's right, the blister packs. Those tabs at the front never tear off correctly, do they? Terrible design. But now I've got her out, it's time to build her. I'm going to be building her just normally. I'm not going to be doing any modifications yet. I'm going to get her as one whole piece and see what I need to do to her from there. Once I had her assembled, I thought about the hair, but I'm not going to put that on because it doesn't really go with the look. Plus, it'd make an awesome addition to my bits box. The base is in one whole piece but separate, so I can work on the miniature itself a little bit better. The first job was going to be to remove this blade here. This blade was going to be removed and attached at the elbow, the gun was going to be kept and the backpack was going, and all of these straps all over and that little bit in between the CPUs there would need to be taken off. The blade was just clipped off very simply and smoothed out those little wires on it that make it like a little power blade thingy, and then it would be ready to attach to the rest of the arm. Once that was smooth, I clipped away the wire that connected the arm to the backpack and roughly clipped the kind of gauntlet off her forearm there. This would need to be smoothed out, and then I would do some scraping with a knife after that to make it as smooth as possible. I did go a little bit ham though, unfortunately, and created a little bit of a crack there, so this would need to be treated very carefully in future as to not make it worse. Once I had it to a point I liked, I shortened the arm and glued the sword on. This would be a kind of a test, and I'd do a little bit more work afterwards, but I had thinned the arm out enough to make it look like it was morphing into the sword. I put a little bit of glue in that crack I caused earlier just to strengthen that. But yeah, not bad. I would need to do a little bit more scraping with a scalpel, but it looks like the sword for a T1000, and I'm pretty happy with where that is now. Just a little bit more scraping in future. Now on with the rest. These little daggery needle things were a separate piece, and I was hoping I could glue them on and then skim off the top with the clippers, leaving the section in her leg because it was like a divot out of the leg. But that didn't work, unfortunately. It left a big hole in the leg and I would have to fill it with green stuff, but it's not the end of the world. It's just another little job that needs doing. The backpack came off with just a snip, and then I had to scrape that shape in her back, kind of giving her the divot in her middle of her back muscles again where the spine is, just smoothing all of that out and taking the straps off from around her shoulders and everywhere else in this model. Why has she got so many leather straps on her when she's in a smooth catsuit? Surely that would catch on the things that the smooth catsuit is designed not to catch on. But never mind, a quick chunky cut off with the scalpel and then a smooth out later with scraping, and they would be gone. Her eyes were a bit of a challenge. These big bug eyes on the suit were difficult to get rid of. Careful cutting. I didn't have to kind of sculpt any more eyes because this was going to be a chromed out monster machine. I just needed a little divot to give it the impression of a rough human crash test dummy looking face. So I didn't take too much care. I was as careful as I could be. And obviously I didn't want to slice myself because that would be bad. But I did manage to get the little divot in there and kind of preserve the bridge of the nose to make it look like the face was roughly human shaped on this miniature. And here's what I'm roughly calling done. Kind of close enough. You can see the human-esque shape to the face is still there and the bug eyes are gone. I used the tip of this little rounded file to grind it down because it's a bit blunter than the scalpel. I'm not going to add too many unwanted scratches that are going to be too visible at the end, and it is going to be ideal to grind down. There's little fine scratches that I've put in there whilst removing those big bug eyes on the suit. We are getting there. Amorphous human blob face complete. Now the green stuffing, simple green stuff job with a rubber tip tool, keeping it wet just to fill those holes on her leg and the back of her head where the hairpiece is meant to go, smoothing it out over time, being patient and creating a nice seamless join with the rest of the miniature. This is relatively easy to do with a little bit of practice and a nice soft tool such as this. This is a paint rubber shaper thingy from Hobbycraft. Once that was done, nice smooth head, nice smooth leg, on to the next. I was done with the entire miniature. It was time to paint. This thing was looking pretty much like I imagined it would when I started this project. I had succeeded in making something that I was happy with, and I was looking forward to experimenting with something to make this the shiniest miniature in all of Warhammer. That being this chrome pen. Now, I've done a lot of Gundam stuff on the channel, which leads me to look into Gundam techniques and stuff in my personal time. Now, a chrome pen is used quite a lot in Gundam painting to colour in the metallics, but not used very often in Warhammer, and I'm going to change that. This thing seems to be fantastic in theory. I've done a couple of tests just to see how it goes on a miniature off camera in my own time, and yeah, pretty damn good.
Yoink!
I sprayed it in an off-white colour just to get a bright base to this miniature because I didn't know if doing it dark black would affect the chrominess, and I was just going to deal with the rock first with a little bit of rattling grime contrast. This was going to be the easiest way to deal with this rock. I just splashed it all over because it was a nice light colour. You could see that shining through in the shallower bits and pooling in the recesses. I did do 2 coats of this over this rock to get it a dark enough colour as I felt like it needed to be, and then dry brushed it afterwards with some Longbeard Grey. Now this is a dry brush paint from Games Workshop. It's one of those gel-based ones. I find them to be pretty useful when dry brushing. There's the rock with 1 coat, and there it is with 2 coats and the dry brush. Yeah, serviceable. It's a rock. You get the message. Next, it was on to the exciting bit, the chrome pen. Now I found with the side of the pen, you can get a lot of coverage very easily. It does flow out quite nicely, but it is liable to pool. Now doing detail work, that may be a bit of an issue, but also the tip is very accurate. It is a bit of a fat pen though, so I did struggle in areas like around the neck and under the chin. They were hard to get that fat pen in there, so I needed to swap out my Chody companion and bring in a more simpler brush. A nice little neat brush to get in those tight spots. But luckily, because this stuff does pool, I had a pool of chrome to work with to push it into those hard to reach recesses, and if it is still very wet, then it flows in there nicely. The brush is hard to clean afterwards. Don't use water. I think spirits are better. Now this stuff is really reflective. You can't quite tell on camera here how good it is. It looks so much better than this in real life. I mean, it looks pretty good on camera, but this is not capturing the true reflectiveness of this medium, this invention, this weird paint pen. I did have trouble getting in between the legs because, again, it is so fat and chody. Please, AK, give me a finer point on this pen. But I just made a little pool on my desk. You can see me do it in the background there. Got it on the brush and poked it in those sensitive areas. This was an okay way to do it. As the paint got tackier though, it was harder to work with and left a few textures on the miniature. Luckily, the region I'm putting this in is not one that hopefully people will be staring at on the model unless they're an absolute weirdo. And then if they're an absolute weirdo, their opinion probably don't matter. But it worked. This pen worked perfectly for the T1000 effect I was trying to achieve. We've only got a few bits to do now on the rest of this model, and it is done. This may be the fastest miniature I've ever painted, if you can even call it painting. I coloured it in. Colouring in miniatures is surprisingly fun. I may try out more markers in the future. One thing left to do was the base. I used this Fireland from AK. AK are quickly becoming my favourite painting brand to work with. Someone send this video to them, sponsor me AK, and I use this all over the base. This miniature is going to go, as I said earlier, with an army that I am producing next week on the channel, and they will all be in a red desert base. I had some troubles doing a red desert base before when I did my Mechanicus Gundam, so I bought this product, and yes, it is a lot better than how I did that base, really bodged. Some Fugan Orange shade was going to be needed on there though, to give it a little bit of depth, because AK paints are very matte, which is something I appreciate when I'm painting the actual miniature, but in something lumpy like a texture paint, it does need a bit more depth and shadow to it. Once that was done and drying, I decided to move on to the gun. Vallejo Black and AK Anthracite Grey for a quick little paint job on there, all in black, little edge highlights in Anthracite Grey, and we're good to go. Move on to the next bit after that would be the glowing gun barrel. Now I know these guns are meant to be green, but I wanted to do this one blue as a test for the plasma. Fluorescent blue would be how I'd do this from AK. The plasma guns I'm going to be doing on the army next week may give you a little hint that is something Imperial. Well, this is an Imperial model, so it's going with an Imperial army, isn't it? But the plasma glow from this fluorescent blue, just thinned down with water to a glaze consistency. Pretty good, simple, easy, quick plasma. This is something I'm going to be using moving forwards. Then when the base was dry, some Tyrant Skull over the top. Now this may look a little bit drastic and weird now, but the step I'm going to do next is going to cover this a bit. I just needed some really intense highlights for the dark red ochre pigment to go over. Now, this is a Vallejo product, and it is pretty damn good. I've used pigment powders a lot on this channel, and I do love them. They tie everything into the base very nicely. Those quite high highlights from the dry brush would be covered up nicely by this pigment. I needed them to shine through to make the tops of the little rocks and bits and bobs on the base in that texture paint look highlighted. Otherwise, it would all be an orange mess. You can see what I mean here. The Tyrant Skull dry brush has been calmed down a lot and is looking a lot more natural, and it ties that piece of masonry in with the base. Just some dry desert plants now on that base, and we're nearly there. There's not a lot you can do on a Red Mars base. Maybe a few rocks would be a good addition. I'll look into that in the future. But for now, just grooming these tufts to get them how I wanted. Personal grooming is important, gentlemen. I say gentlemen because I have a 99% male viewership. Hello, 1% ladies out there. Remember to pluck, gentlemen, and groom yourself as well as your tufts. Solid advice from Lizard of Doom there. Once they were groomed to perfection, I was done. Just a bit of rimming, and then we're finished. Thank you for watching this weird little, not quite kit bash pen experiment that I've brought to you today. Hopefully you liked what I made in the end. Leave a little comment, say what you think about the chrome effect, whether you think it's worth exploring on other miniatures in the future, trying to do smaller detailed work. I think that might be my next step with the chrome pens. Thank you for watching. Make sure you do a little like. Thank you very much, and a little comment for the algorithm. Thank you very much. Thank you to my Patreons. If you would like to join them, the link is up there. Their names will be over the reveal shots in just a little second. Also, remember to subscribe because you like my new 30% extra face. Thank you very much. Goodbye. I mean, hasta la vista, baby.
Servitor report.
We're approaching the Binar system now, sir. Rogue Knight household reported in the area, and also scans show a large Tyranid activity on neighboring planets.
We'll deal with the bugs. Send the assassin to the Knight household.